Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I am a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So we need to talk about the astrological energy of December because we have so much energy that is retrograde. So it's really interesting for the final month of the year, right? A lot of reviewing, a lot of revising, a lot of reflecting, a lot of sort of psychological internal changes, a lot of transformational energy with Mercury retrograde in Scorpio with the Sun. And it's being aspected by Jupiter retrograde. And then we also do have Mars, which is going to go retrograde in December as well too. So there's a lot of internal reflective energy. And the main themes that we're going to see for December astrologically and energetically is a lot of reviewing, a lot of revising, a lot of editing things from the past. There can be a lot of issues within contracts and agreements because Mercury is retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde. So we do want to be cautious of like signing things, agreements, contracts. We want to double check all of those things as well too. There can be huge themes this month as well of justice and people reviewing their belief systems and people arguing over their beliefs. Things of that nature as well are very prominent. So I really want to pull up the chart so you guys can follow along with ease as I'm discussing the energy of I'm going to pull up the chart for December 13th so we can see that Mars energy go retrograde. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart and then we're going to go into in-depth analysis of what's coming up and what we can expect for this final month of the year, which is so exciting. This has been a really intense year for a lot of people because it has been a Saturn-ruled year, right? If we're talking about numerology, it's been this month that has been really ruled by Saturn, and Saturn has been retrograde for a majority of the year. Saturn rules discipline, Saturn rules karma. Saturn rules hard work, Saturn rules obstacles and, delays and setbacks, but also Saturn rules hard work. And so people have had this sort of mixed year energetically where there's been a lot of like setbacks and intense karma and karmic retribution and themes like that. But then also there's been a lot of putting in hard work into things and people finding themselves really unraveling things that don't serve them and starting new ventures and really putting in hard work as well too with all that Saturn energy that has been in 2024. So I'm really excited for a new year next year. I think 2025 is going to be a really good year. I have a good feeling about it. But let's go ahead and pull up the chart for December so you guys can follow along and see what's going on energetically. All right, guys, so here we have a daily chart pulled up for December 13th. So I'm going to go through and really analyze different things going on astrologically. Where I want to start is over here with Mercury retrograde with the Sun in Scorpio. And this has been a really important energy for December, right? Mercury retrograde in Scorpio will show a lot of reflecting on these sort of deeper, darker themes, right? The Sun with Mercury shows, the things we're processing, the things we're thinking about, our mental energy, our intellect. And when Mercury has been retrograde in that sign of Scorpio with the Sun, there's been a lot of these like deeper, darker, more taboo things that have probably come up for a lot of people. Maybe there's themes of unraveling their own psychology, their own history, their own traumas, their own connection to sexuality. These more intense or taboo themes have been coming up a lot with that Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. So we're going to see in December, a lot of people are looking at patterns and themes and psychology and, maybe sexual patterns, things that are very scorpionic by nature, and sort of like unraveling where did those beliefs come from? Where did those ideologies come from? Where did those patterns come from? Where did that subconscious stuff come from? Whenever I see like planets in Scorpio, I almost see it as like, getting to the root of some sort of like psychological junk is how I would imagine that, right? It's kind of like looking at this stuff that's been like so built up in our subconscious and our reality and really getting to the root of it and understanding like where does that come from? An example of Mercury retrograde in Scorpio with the Sun would be like, okay, I have this belief that I have to work this job. Where did that belief come from? Another example would, I have this belief that I can't make money doing X, Y, and Z. Where does that belief come from? I have a belief that I can't do this, I can't do that, this isn't possible. And when Mercury goes retrograde in Scorpio with the sun, we're kind of understanding like, where did all these belief systems come from? And where is it stemming from, right? Because it's also opposite Jupiter, which is also retrograde. So we have Jupiter retrograde aspecting Mercury retrograde with the sun, and Jupiter-Mercury aspects are always about thinking and communication and teaching and learning and, ideologies and philosophies and beliefs. So it's not just a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio where we're getting to the depths and we're getting to the roots of things with the sun also sitting there as well too. It's also getting an aspect from Jupiter retrograde. See that right here? So it shows that like this Mercury retrograde is also getting that Jupiterian influence as well too. So a lot of really pondering the depths of our psychology and our ideologies and our belief systems and our philosophies. And it's a lot of looking at those things and, realizing like what doesn't serve me anymore, what belief systems are outdated, what ideologies are outdated personally and also collectively as well too, right? So when we have that Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury retrograde, people are also very fed up collectively with a lot of the ideologies that are out there. There's a lot of political disputes and things of that nature with Jupiter retrograde aspecting Mercury retrograde as well too. So that's absolutely going on. And the main thing that you'll find is a lot of people are coming to like revise or review the things that they have believed to be true thus far with that opposition of energy, right? So if there's anything that you've been like stuck in pattern wise or, in terms of what you believe about yourself or believe about the world with that Jupiter retrograde aspecting Mercury retrograde, there's going to be this sort of collective reviewing and revising of that. So you want to look at, your life and see if there's been thought patterns, belief systems that maybe don't serve you anymore at this time, right? That's the nature of Mercury retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde. You're also going to find with these two planets opposing each other retrograde, it's definitely a time where there can be a lot of contractual disagreements, maybe issues around contracts. If you're like signing anything, signing any sort of contract, you definitely want to be extra cautious in this December time period. I would personally wait until like late December, early January to sign anything, to sign like a lease or an agreement or anything like that, especially if it's like legal by nature, legally binding. I would wait until early January for sure, just because there's so much retrograde and it's the karakas of like justice and those themes as well too. So I would absolutely wait for that. But you're going to find as well too that people collectively are feeling this kind of like confusion about what to believe, what's real, what's being put out in the media, what can we trust, things like that as well too with Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury retrograde. Jupiter doesn't necessarily do its best when it's aspecting Mercury for the reason that it really expands our thinking. So it can be also a lot of like overthinking, a lot of restlessness with Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury retrograde. People can feel like they don't really know what to believe or what direction to go in their belief systems as well too. So there's a lot of like this mass confusion with our beliefs, and people are like, do I go this direction or do I think this? Do I believe this to be true? A lot of confusion as well with those two planets retrograde, best believe it. All right, so then we are going to hop over here to where we're going to have Mars also retrograde in Cancer in its debilitation. So when Mars is in its debilitation and it's retrograde, there's going to be a sense of people collectively being very reflective and focused on their assertion of energy. So you might find a lot of people are trying new methods of exercise and health and working out. And it's actually really funny because I've had so many friends telling me like, oh, I want to find like a new workout. Like I'm, trying to figure out what to do with my workout routine, or people are getting really interested in fitness. That's that Mars that's going to be debilitated and retrograde. It means that we're reviewing or revising the way that we assert our energy. So a really good time to, work out, get a new fitness routine, and really reflect on how you want to assert yourself energetically. Because that planet is not in its highest placement and it's also retrograde, people can also be more angry at this time, more quick to anger. Collectively, people are really like hasty and feisty in their energy right now. So you definitely want to watch for that. Like when you're like driving or doing things, you might notice people are more angry, or they have more road rage, things like that with Mars debilitated. and going retrograde. And unless you have Mars natally in Cancer, or if you have like a Mars retrograde, people are definitely going to be more tired at this time as well too. There's going to be a sense of people not feeling like they have their normal sense of energy. So the best way to sort of combat that is to work out, exercise, go for walks, things like that. Try to like get that energy moving with Mars retrograde in Cancer as well too. Okay, so we have Venus that is moving into Capricorn, right? It came out of Sagittarius, now it's in Capricorn, and it's directly aspecting by opposition that Mars retrograde. So Venus aspecting Mars is a very creative aspect. So even though we have a lot of this like retrograde energy, a lot of like reflecting, reviewing, revising, you can also find that people are very creatively inspired at this time because that Venus is in direct opposition to Mars retrograde, right? So we might find that people are really focused on like creative new ways to do things. People are very creatively inspired. Maybe they're more passionate about things, right? That Venus aspecting Mars can also show there's a lot of themes and reflection on, sexuality collectively. So not only do we have that Mercury retrograde with the Sun in Scorpio, which is very much, collectively reviewing or revising themes of sexuality, we also have Venus aspecting a Mars retrograde by opposition. So there's something going on collectively about like women versus men and connected to sexuality. And we're going to find probably a lot of themes come up like December going into January. Obviously this would connect a lot with what's going on politically, but Venus opposite Mars retrograde, there's a lot of stuff going on with the political climate that connects to sexuality and women and how their beliefs are different than male beliefs as well too, with that Mars retrograde opposing Venus, right? Venus is women, Mars is male energy. So when they are opposite and Mars is debilitated in retrograde, we are going to see some issues between women and men as well this year. There's a lot of differing viewpoints collectively, politically, things of that nature. And there's some huge theme, guys, around like the way that we view sexuality collectively. So I do feel like a lot of people are changing their beliefs or viewpoints in connection to sexuality. Maybe more people are realizing they want to use that energy differently. Maybe there's some sense of like women and men are having different, viewpoints and beliefs around sexuality collectively as well too, with that Venus opposite Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. All right, we're absolutely going to see those themes are happening. So we do have Saturn direct at this time, which is interesting because we have all these other planets that just went retrograde, and then we have Saturn, which recently went direct. So, with Saturn direct, there is a sense of us really wanting to put in our work and, really do things that are more structured and disciplined and organized. But then we have all these other planets retrograde. So it's kind of this duality where the final month of the year, you're going to find people want to kind of push forward and they have a lot of ideas. But then Mars is, debilitated retrograde, Mercury is still retrograde. So it's this energy of finishing up projects, reviewing, revising, editing things. Maybe we've written something, maybe we've, done a creative project, and now we kind of want to finish it or do the final editing and reviewing and revising on it this month. So an example of Venus opposite Mars retrograde, Mercury retrograde with the Sun, Jupiter opposite Mercury retrograde. If like someone wrote a book, if someone wrote a script, if someone wrote, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Creatively, if someone's working on a website, this is a month where someone would want to review and revise that and then put out the final thing closer to like January time is how I would see that. It is a really creative month though. And what I find with retrograde planets is we can actually come up with very unique ideas during like a retrograde energy, because retrograde means that it's, giving us something that's unorthodox or unusual. So Mars retrograde, maybe we're having unusual or unorthodox ideas about fitness and health and how we want to assert our energy. Mercury retrograde, we're having unusual or unorthodox ideas around communication. How do we want to express ourselves? How do we want to write differently? Venus opposite Mars retrograde, unusual creativity, right? So it is a powerful month to like review and revise ideas and projects and business ideas and really get to the understanding of like where we want to push our energy forward going into January. So I do have this, like, I made this tweet the other day, which is like funny. Like, I don't really take Twitter seriously. I just go on there sometimes and tweet random things. But I like tweeted the other day and I was like, I'm currently going through a rebrand. And I was like half joking, but I was also like very serious. Because with all the planetary energy retrograde, like I've been so like going through this like internal rebrand where I'm like, okay, like how do I want my astrology business to progress? How do I want my social media content to progress? How do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to come across in business and life and partnerships and connections and friendships, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all of this like retrograde energy, right? It's like reviewing and revising and rebranding and revisiting. And you also might find that a lot of like past relationships or past sort of karmic things come up at this time. But what you'll find during a retrograde time period is you want to actually just like shut the door and say no to things that don't serve you anymore, right? When planets go retrograde, there's often this temptation or this sort of karmic lesson that will occur that will show us like, okay, are we going back to the old ways that we used to do things, or are we progressing forward, right? So let's say that someone comes back that you used to date during a Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde opposite Venus, maybe there's temptation there, maybe there's comfort there, maybe there's familiarity there, but is the person that you're actually trying to become really aligned with that old version of yourself? Probably not, right? Let's say an old business opportunity comes up that you're like, I really don't feel like that was aligned, and it comes back. You can view it from a new perspective, or you can review it or revise it, but you could also kind of look at it and go, no, I think I'm moving on to something bigger and better, right? That's all that retrograde energy. It's showing us like these past themes that come up, and we either decide to close the door and move on and move forward, or we can review or revise or revisit it in some way and then sort of close the door or do it in a different way as well too. All right, so this was some of the December energy. We're going to have Mercury retrograde opposing Jupiter retrograde, lots of intense beliefs collectively. Venus is going to be opposite Mars retrograde. There's going to be a lot of fighting and sort of this contention between, feminine energy and masculine energy in connection to sexuality and how we express ourselves collectively as well too. So we're going to see a lot of that energy is going on. I would say it's a great month to review, revise, rebrand, go to any sort of core beliefs and philosophies or ideologies you've had thus far and look at them and be like, is this really serving me, or is this something that I got from this person? Is this something that I got from this energy? Is this something I saw and read once here? It's kind of like looking at teachings and ideas that exist in the ethers and realizing like, oh, I don't have to take all of those on. I can really choose what I believe and choose, what I want to do going forward with that Jupiter retrograde opposite Mercury retrograde as well too. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this chart analysis into December. It's really a time to like rebrand, review, revise, reflect, and also just rewire certain patterns or certain psychological beliefs. And, if you are a creative, if you do anything creatively, whenever I say creative, I'm always like wanting to, emphasize that like we're all creative in different ways, right? I'll get a lot of clients where they have really creative artistic charts, but they're not, in the field of art, and it can manifest in so many different ways, right? Like I have a very creative chart, and I originally was in art for a little bit. And now I just use my creativity in business, right? So it's like we all have creativity, but we don't necessarily have to channel it professionally, right? So it's like using that creativity this month into different things like business, branding, marketing, whatever it is. It's a really powerful month for, tapping into our unorthodox creativity and using it in different ways that isn't necessarily just like making a painting, right? With that Venus opposite Mars debilitated, can be a very creative month as well too. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys are having such a beautiful, blessed day or evening whenever you're watching this, and you guys can always book a personal session with me as well, too. It'll be linked down below for my website for bookings, and I hope you guys have such a great day, and I'm sending all the love. Bye, guys!